Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to our London system series. So in this series we're following this very nice opening from White's perspective, and today we're continuing with the London system against the Grunfeld defense. But this Grunfeld defense can be chosen maybe even by a King's Indian player. So this setup that we're doing today is basically against the King's Indian, East Indian or the Grunfeld defense. So it's basically a setup in which black tries to move g6, bishop to g7 and d5. So we're playing the London system against these types of setups. As I said, a King's Indian player, an East Indian player, maybe even a Perth defense player will try this setup, but I think a Grunfeld defense player will try this setup for sure. So basically it's the London system against the Grunfeld setup today. So today we're starting a very important mini series in the London system series, and it will be the so-called Barry attack. I've covered the Barry attack already in one of my videos, but I will try now to do this Barry attack in a more complex way. We'll see now many sidelines, and I think in this Barry attack now, with this Barry attack London system, we'll have at least 10-12 videos, so you'll be familiar with the Barry attack. The Barry attack is a very aggressive setup, and I think that many players don't find good ways how to play against this Barry attack by White. So it's still basically a sideline of the London system, this Barry attack setup that we're trying today, and it's really cool one. I use it many times. I really had great success in many of my games, so I think you can learn it very easily because most of the times we're playing the same move order like in the usual London system. So let's check out what's all about, what's black's idea, what are of course our counter attack ideas. Here we're opening of course with the move d4. Our opponent plays knight to f6, we play knight to f3, and now d5. We're going into a London system setup with the move bishop to f4, and now comes the move g6. Okay, here you see already that black is trying this Grunfeld setup with the move bishop to g7 and c5, knight to c6. Today we're analyzing this Grunfeld setup with bishop to g7 and b6 with bishop to b7 idea. So a double fianchetto style with common opportunities to make a pawn breakthrough with the move c5. Here my recommendation is to go e3, common London system move. And now after bishop to g7, now comes I think the tricky part. It's the move knight to c3. This is my recommendation as a setup. First of all, black always has to take care of some potential ideas with knight to b5. With a direct attack on the c7 weakness, so that's why black has to be careful. Here we'll analyze, as I said, the Grunfeld setup sort of with, as I said, g6, bishop to g7 and d5, followed with b6, bishop to b7 ideas. This is also a normal idea because in some occasions you will see that black is trying bishop to b7 and then a knight to e4 outpost. Here my recommendation is simply healthy developing, bishop to e2. This is now the Barry attack setup. This is really a sideline of the Barry attack of the London system, pardon me. This is now a common idea, bishop to e2, knight to c3, knight to f3, bishop to f4, e3, d4. So this is the setup we are playing against the Grunfeld setup, which we have to play over and over. This will not be changed. This setup we're playing the whole time. So after castling, now comes really the common Barry attack move, and it's the move knight to e5. What we should notice always about these positions, that the king of ours, even if it stays in the center, is not in danger, but because first of all we have a powerful control of the e5 square. The pawn is protecting the e5, the bishop is protecting the e5, the knight is protecting the e5 square, so no pawn breakthrough motifs are possible here. Black could maybe prepare something like knight from f to d7, maybe f6, e5, but if you have noticed, these are at least 3 tempos. You meanwhile you can make many things happen, so that's why I'm not sure if black is going to go into this setup. We'll analyze also in a similar structure this idea when our opponent plays this move f6, e5, but it will be in a different setup by black. So here knight to e5, that's our main goal. Our main goal is now after e5, knight to e5, h4, h5, h6, bishop to h6, simply trading the dark square bishop, play something like bishop to d3. It's very important now in the beginning to not mess this up, to play the move bishop to d3, because your opponent could play something like bishop to g4, and then you cannot control the e5 square very well. So we don't want the spinning idea. We want to still have a bishop to e2, and if now bishop to g4 happens, still we have opportunities to play knight to e5, then queen to e2 after potential trades of bishops, and then continuing our h4 h5 attack. So that's why, as I said, after castling, knight to e5, bishop to b7, and now h4. As I said, I've covered already this particular line in one of my videos, but I think it's a great line that you should really memorize. When your opponent plays a mistake, it's a move h6. After the move h6, it's already basically, it's not game over, but it's really a tricky part here for black. Black will have troubles after the move h6 because now we want to play the move h5. Black hoped for here, of course, after potential h6 that he can pass through with the move g5, but that's basically our goal because we have now a great tactical shot. Bishop takes g5. That's the tactic we should always memorize. H takes g5 has to happen because black doesn't want to lose a pawn, of course, and now comes h6. There are now several choices. Of course, bishop takes h6 is a possibility, and then we can take rook h6. Our rook is very active. We could try bishop to d3, queen to f3, then queenside castling, doubling up rooks. So I don't think it's a bad, it's a good choice here for black to proceed in this way. So what black can do, you see, black has already some space problems. He can play the move bishop to h8, but now comes really the great tactic. We can play the move h7. And again, there are now two choices basically here for black. Black can try king to g7 or knight takes h7. If knight takes h7, you could even try immediately a winning move. It's the move bishop to a6. The problem about this move, you see, if you don't take, we'll simply take the bishop, then afterwards we'll take also the rook. But if bishop to a6 happens, then queen to h5 wins the game immediately. You cannot protect everything. You could try knight to f6, but then we'll simply take the bishop, and it's a forced checkmate here in 3. So that's why, let's go back, after move h7, your opponent could try here to move king to g7. But you see now, this king is blocking out the bishop. Although we have sacrificed the bishop in the beginning for a pawn, now this bishop on h8 is basically out of game. And now comes the really great Barry attack style. Here comes the move bishop to d3. Always consider this maneuver of the bishop to e2. As I said in the beginning, we should place our bishop on e2 because the pinning idea was very powerful, this bishop to g4 idea. Then we couldn't play this knight to e5 move, but now when we have opened the position, bishop to d3 is a great idea. And what could happen? Maybe if bishop to a6 happens, then you see now, I wanted to show you a really instructive game by Mark Hebden. Queen to f3 is simple idea. We want to sneak in with our queen to h3, and then queen to h6. Again, if knight to h7 happens, you solve the tactical problems, queen to h5. And now bishop to d3, c takes d3, and now if queen to d6 happens, we'll simply have queen to f5, and black has really some troubles because in the game here, Mark Hebden's opponent tried rook to d8, but now you see the g5 pawn is hanging, queen takes g5 was played, queen to f8, and now king to e2. We don't have to even castle. That's the great part of this game. We can simply proceed with our rook attack, a6, and now here rook to h6. The idea is, of course, rook takes f6, followed with queen to g8. So that's why knight from b to d7 was played. But now this rook comes into the game. In the game, queen to e6 was played. And now you see rook to h4. We are creating again this battery. But now after d takes e5, you see the knight has again to move. But king to e8 happened, and now we can simply take after e takes f6. Here queen to g3 was played. If we evaluate now already this position, we can say white is much better. This pawn is a powerful piece. The bishop is always stuck here. In the game, Mark Hebden's opponent tried king to e7, but now queen takes c7, rook to d7 was played, and now in this position black even resigns. So it's really incredible. As I said, this potential rook sacrifice in the beginning, as I said, h7, knight to h7, you saw it's really a tactical problem because bishop to a6 will happen, then followed with queen to h5. So what black could also do, instead of this maybe bishop to a6 idea, black could also try maybe something like knight from b to d7, but it's not a problem here to proceed. Black can maybe challenge our outposted knight, but still we're continuing with our common idea, queen to f3. And an instructive game also in this line is a game played by Alexei Utkin against Artyom Zubritsky. The problem is always this one. If even black manages to take out our very powerful knight, d takes e5 happens, and then you still have to move your knight somewhere, which is the key defensive piece here in the game. After knight takes e5, here d takes e5, you see e6 was played, but now we're again sneaking in with the queen, queen to h3, knight to g4, and now you have to get your piece back. After potential f5 here, it's not a problem. Again, we're sneaking in with the queen. The queen will find always a way to attack black's king. After something like a6, castling is even a possibility. You see, we're bringing more and more pieces in the attack. After queen to e7 here, Alexei Utkin played simply g4 and opens now the position. Here, the g7 square is a weakness. We can try queen to h6, followed with something like g takes f5, rook to g1. Really have a very powerful attack with all of our pieces, with the bishop, with the rooks, with the queen. This pawn, as I said, is very, very annoying. So that's why you see now how basically black makes a mistake immediately. That's really the line that I want you to memorize. After the potential h6, h5 is possible. Even if knight takes h5 will simply take, bishop takes h5, g takes h5, and then a queen to h5. We have a great control. As I said, the whole our attack is built around our e5 square, and it's many times in the London system that the game is simply a battle around this e5 square. So I hope you realize these ideas. This is now our first line of the barrier attack against this g6, bishop to g7 setup, followed with b6, bishop to b7. We'll now analyze more and more lines. Although I didn't want really to cover this London system from this line, so I wanted to show you more of the strategical ideas. But I really think that we should also know some lines after potential bishop to a6, then also with some c5 ideas. These things can really happen to you, and as I said, at least we'll have 10 or 12 videos in this London system, in the so-called barrier attack against this Grunfeld setup. I really love to call it the Grunfeld setup because it's really common idea: g6, bishop to g7, and d5. Okay, this will be our first video of the barrier attack. I think it's a very, very cool attack. As I mentioned, I really had great success in these types of setups. I really want you to learn this because this is really important. It's really a great flowish sort of attack. You don't have to, I think, in the beginning calculate so many things. You have a great setup. You're playing many times the same setup with main common tactics and main common strategical ideas. And I think in the future we can have then a great coverage of this London system. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. As I said, these games that we analyze will be in the description below. You can maybe analyze the whole games. If you want to see more London system game videos, check out my London system series. Here's the link. And if you have troubles to play as black, check out my Hyper Accelerated Dragon Sicilian Defense series and my King's Indian and Nimzo Indian Defense series. As a nice defensive strategies against white's preparation against d4 and e4. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.